this weekend, great things happen in threes, and for us, luckily enough, we get a third iteration of Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Thank you so much for joining Fight Night Picks this weekend, Matt. Question mark kicks last weekend, amazing. A ton of people tuned in. We had a lot of fun jumping into the chat. You can catch that 2 hours before the prelims. QMK, if you ever see it on our channel, that's what it is. That's what it means. There's that pop-up in this video, but you should check it out. But Matt, when it comes down to this fight, the first fight between these two guys was UFC 245, December 2019. Number 2 was UFC 251, July of 2020. And since these two had fought, whether you thought that Volkanovski won the first fight or Holloway, and the same thing goes for the second fight, you could split them with a hair. Very, very close, very well matched, awesome fights. These two guys have looked like world beaters in their last two fights. For Alexander Volkanovski, withstands the choke from hell against Bryan Ortega just to beat the brakes off him in that fight. And when it comes to his last fight, did he retire the Korean Zombie? I don't know, but he beat him so soundly, finished him in the 4th round. That fight wasn't all that long ago, just a little over 2 months ago for Volkanovski. For Max Holloway, sets a record for significant strikes landed in a fight against Calvin Kattar, just continues to rack up those totals. And then he fights Yair Rodriguez 7 months ago in a fight where most people, myself included, didn't think Yair Rodriguez stood a snowball's chance in hell. And boy, oh boy, was that a good fight, Matt. Did you enjoy it?
You're using a lot of my terms. Yeah, no, it was a great fight, but I'm going to disagree. A world beater would suggest that you beat everybody and nothing's close. Volkanovski almost got choked out twice against Ortega and kind of got dropped against him too, and everybody thought he was going to beat the Korean Zombie. So I'm not that surprised by what we know now with Alexander Volkanovski. What I will say though is he has been grappling slightly more than he was when he first won the title, which does remind me a lot of his earlier run in the UFC before he fought Jose Aldo and Chad Mendes, back to when he fought the likes of like Jeremy Kennedy and Darren Elkins. He used his wrestling a lot more in those matchups compared to now because he is such a good striker. It's kind of like when you hear Jose Aldo has a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's had it for 15 years. That's cool and all, but when you're as good as Jose Aldo at striking, why the hell would you ever take anybody down? Because you really don't ever need to worry about it. The one thing I do think that will be different about this fight than the previous two is that I do expect Volkanovski to go for a lot more offensive takedowns. And just looking at their first two fights quick, I thought Volkanovski easily won the first fight. I genuinely don't see why there was any controversy around their first fight. I thought Volkanovski kind of easily won
3 rounds to 2?
4 rounds to 1,
right,
if we're being honest, because he shut down a lot of the offense of Max Holloway. Remember, he was using the leg kicks, he made Holloway switch stances. Like, he was able to do the counter of a lot of the positives that Max Holloway normally does. The second fight, I'll be honest, I thought Holloway did win that fight. I thought he was able to drop Volkanovski multiple times throughout that fight, and I thought he did enough to win 3 of the 5 rounds. But again, that fight was extremely close for both guys. They both landed some great shots.
And I thought the first fight, 3 rounds to 2 for Volkanovski as well. Second fight, 3 rounds to 2 for Holloway. But the craziest part about it is, if you believe Max Holloway, doing all the training sessions for the second fight on Zoom. So a little wild there. And obviously, former, UFC buddy from Hawaii at the same time, Martin Day, tried to do that, and it did not work out for him against Davey Grant. But when it does come down to this fight, Matt, for Volkanovski, this is a guy that's kind of like low-key building a championship, like Hall of Fame resume, beating guys, like you said, Jose Aldo, Chad Mendes, Max Holloway's, the Korean Zombies, the Bryan Ortegas, and you look at it, 10 bonuses for, a guy like Max Holloway. He had the double bonus against Bryan Ortega. You don't see those very often. 8 title fights, 6-2 in those. Obviously, loses to Volkanovski, and then against Dustin Poirier, I guess, so really it is 6-3. And if you do look at it for Volkanovski, he's had 4 title fights. He's won all of them. It comes down to this big-time matchup in this fight where Volkanovski, you saw him last weekend in Vegas with Adesanya sitting next to him, all the boys from City Kickboxing, cheering on Carlos Ulberg. Giant win over Tafon Chukwe. They want to keep that storm coming. They want to keep that wave rolling. And for the great Volkanovski, no longer is he the thick boy rugby player. He is a toned machine at 145. And again, but this is one of those ones, and I heard this brought up by, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due, Brian Campbell, you got Luke Thomas, you got the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall. They were talking about it. Will one of these guys look old this weekend? It was going to be one of my talking points, but I kind of heard them flesh it out. I think it's an interesting one, because Holloway looks so good against Kattar, had a great fight against Yair Rodriguez.
Here's my question. If we can just stay on that for a second, do you think that fight was Holloway maybe reaching a plateau, not necessarily regressing, but just being the guy we thought, or was that Yair kind of becoming the fighter that we all thought he could be?
We're going to find that out in the next month when Rodriguez takes on Ortega when we have this fight. I think that's all I can say because I'm not a clairvoyant.
But still, that would kind of help us figure out if Max Holloway looked good. That's why I ask you.
I think we're starting to get to that point. I mean, again, the guy came into the UFC at, 20? Now he's 30. He's had a multitude of fights. I talked about it. 10 bonuses. Like, you don't have 10 bonuses without going through some crazy stuff. And these aren't just like, okay, he has 10 bonuses and 9 of them are performance bonus first-round knockouts. No, this guy's having fight of the night after fight of the night. Giving a lot of damage, but receiving a lot as well. The McGregor fight's a big example of one. The Poirier fights are examples like... But when you look at it for Volkanovski, the guy's so damn defensively sound. He's a shell out there.
But the problem is he has been getting hit lately, and that was a big talking point for me going into the Korean Zombie fight. Volkanovski gets hurt on the feet. It does happen. Even before he became champion, he was susceptible to big shots, and Max Holloway proved that. He was able to drop him right near the end of the first round and basically right at the end of the second round in their second fight. I just don't know what version of Holloway we're going to get, because it is very obvious. Both of these guys have to fight in a different manner when they fight each other compared to when they fight everybody else. That's how skilled these two guys are. Because if Holloway goes in with that, I'm gonna flood him with my output. I'm just gonna put so much on him that he can't react to it. Well, Volkanovski is an all-time good chin. He does have all-time good striking defense. And B, he can go for takedowns, get under your strikes, and really make you pay for them. And the flip side is, Volkanovski can't really sit on a lot of his shots, and he can't really go for a lot of takedowns against a guy like Max Holloway because, on the flip side, Holloway, great footwork, very long for the division, really intelligent guy too, and that has to be said for both guys. That's kind of the missing piece when you talk about a fighter's skill set before they become a champ. It's, hey, they're good at wrestling, they're good at jiu-jitsu, they're good at striking, but how smart are they at putting all three of those things together? These are two of the fighters that have kind of reached the pinnacle of becoming mixed martial artists, because even though Volkanovski is naturally a striker, and same thing with Max Holloway, they can beat guys with their grappling, they can beat guys with their clinch, they can overwhelm guys with their cardio, and that's what makes this fight so good. You can put these guys together 15 times, I don't care what the result is, it's always going to make for an entertaining fight because they're so skilled in every area of the sport.
Hopefully none of those 15 are draws, and hopefully this one this weekend isn't either, unless it's a wild fight or no contest or an eye poke or whatever. But when I do look at it, Holloway's weird because he's got a long frame, he's got long legs, he's got short arms. Like, Artem MMA is going to love this, but like Artem Lobov, really, really tiny arms at 145. But Holloway does have shorter arms, but he understands his length so damn well that it doesn't really matter. For Volkanovski on the entries, Holloway can crouch, still keep his base, keep that takedown defense, and work that volume. And listen, you don't need me to tell you that. You saw that in 2 other fights. But when it does come down to this one, let's let the odds tell a story. Volkanovski favorite, open -145, -190 right now. For Holloway, open +125, +155. We have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprise us they are to you. I haven't thrown this one out to the YouTube community tab, but I will. So look out for that on our YouTube channel in the community tab. Look at that. 921 total votes, 72% Volkanovski, 79% by decision for the 28% that have Holloway, 82% by decision. So a guy wins the first 2 fights. Listen, we talked about this, Matt. We talked about this on the live show, Question Mark Kicks. We said, how many times has somebody won the first 2 fights, and then what happened after that? Well, Vanderlei Silva beat Rampage Jackson in their first 2 fights, and then Rampage won the next 2. So maybe this is Max Holloway's Rampage.
I hope to God we don't see part 4 of this in Bellator.
That one was so bad.
Oh my god. If we see Volkanovski versus Holloway at welterweight in Bellator in 5 years, I'm going to be pissed off. But the good news is we get the Trilogy 4 UFC title in both guys' relative primes. This is the difference between both fighters, though, or at least what I believe. Max Holloway, I think, has plateaued as a fighter. Nothing wrong with that. When you're an all-time great, it's going to kind of get hard to keep on improving when you're an all-time great. And I kind of liken this fight a little bit to Canelo versus Triple G. Because Max Holloway, like Triple G, got started early, was a phenom, and had a lot of really hard fights. But at a certain point, you do kind of just become the fighter that you are because you are so skilled in all these other areas. Whereas Alexander Volkanovski is constantly getting better. And as you are this dominant champion, he's watching you, and he has something to aspire to constantly. It's what The Last Dance is about. The Last Dance is just a documentary about a guy who's so good at something he doesn't want to do it anymore and has to find added motivation. Because that's really the key when you're an upper echelon athlete for years. You have to be motivated to keep on doing this time in, time out. For Volkanovski, I think the whole time Holloway was champion, was this dominant champion, at a young age, we're all talking about Holloway as, hey, like, how good will he be? It wasn't like, is he going to be in the Hall of Fame? It's, where on Mount Rushmore are we going to put Max Holloway Holloway's face. That was the development plan for how good Holloway was as a title. That constantly gave Alexander Volkanovski something to aspire to, something to fight towards. And I do think that by now he is the slightly more well-rounded guy. I expect more takedowns out of Volkanovski because I do think he trusts his own gas tank. He's one of the few guys who can work a hard 25 minutes with Max Holloway. Most fighters can go 25 minutes with Max Holloway, but he's going to have that 4 or 5 minute avalanche to where he puts such a space between him and you that you're never going to be able to cover the distance. I don't think Volkanovski's that fighter. I think he can negate some of Holloway's advantages with his leg kick and with his takedowns. I expect this to be an incredible fight, but I am slightly favoring Volkanovski.
I think it's going to be another close one. I think you're going to have people splitting hairs once more, and I don't see a guy having such a big edge and advantage. But when I do look at this one, you talk about the last dance. Hopefully Alexander Volkanovski, when it's all said and done, isn't like Australia's Luke Longley, and they just forget about him. But Matt, I do agree. Both of us going with Alexander Volkanovski. The and still, is it the popular pick? Let us know down below in that comment section. You guys fill that up every single weekend. The likes mean something. The comments mean something. Subscribe at your own risk or peril. But we have a big time week planned. Obviously, Cannonier challenging Adesanya for the belt up at the top, City Kickboxing Zone. But we also have question mark kicks 2 hours before the prelims and the Fight Night Pick Sidekick, where we go live and talk about the fights during that main card. So you can join us here on the channel. You keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.